Hi everyone. Today in this post, I'm going to talk about different kinds of relationships that a twin flame journey can have. Either prior to meeting your twin flame or post meeting your twin flame, people can experience different kinds of relationships. And the reason being, while twin flame relationship is a divine relationship, in order to understand the deeper meaning of true love or a deep spiritual love, one has to also understand other kinds of loves or other ways of people showing their love that may not be the 3D way in which we usually see love in books and movies or we expect love to be. And in order to understand love deeply, many twin flames, that's why, undergo different kinds of loving relationships in their life, or may even have different types of lack of love presenting to them in their lives as they are going on their journey. So many a times people get confused between deep connections or connections that invoke deep vibrational feeling between two individuals, and they confuse that and think that if you have a deep connection with someone, if you have a deep heart chakra based bond or deep vibrational energetic bond with another individual, they might confuse that to be a twin flame relationship in the beginning, when they may not be aware of the differences and nuances between how a twin flame relationship presents and how other kinds of relationship might present. So I'm going to give examples mostly from my journey and maybe a little bit from other people that I have observed around me in my life. And the reason I'm going to give these examples is because I want to demonstrate the differences that show up in different kinds of relationships, and hopefully by listening to my journey and my story, you will be able to discern something about your own different kinds of relationships. So, usually, if you're going through a twin flame journey, or as you start learning about the twin flame journey, you may come across terms like karmic relationships, soulmates, or false twins. So, I'm going to go through these three types of relationship dynamics that presented in my life and in some other people's lives. So for a false twin relationship, what I have observed to be a false twin relationship in my life was related to a boyfriend I had in the past, almost 20 years, maybe not 20, a little less than 20 years back. And in that relationship, we had a deep heart-based connection, deep sexual connection, but other connections were missing in the relationship. But because our soul contract was likely very deep, and we probably might have had even past lives together as either spouses or some other kind of a relation dynamics we might have played out in the past, and as a result of our past relationship with each other, when we showed up in each other's lives in this lifetime, we were meant to trigger each other. So I triggered him a lot and he triggered me a lot. He wanted the kind of relationship which was very sexual in nature, whereas I wanted a relationship which had more deeper, meaningful connections, because while I was growing up, I didn't have that many deep, meaningful connections in my life. So I always was searching for a deep, meaningful relationship. So while I was focusing more on the practical aspects, and maybe I was looking for friendship also, and I was also looking for some of the norms that we see in romantic movies. So I was expecting some of those things to turn up in the relationship with my first boyfriend. But unfortunately, it wasn't that type of relationship at all. And I had a lot of growth because of the toxic on and off relationship dynamics that we presented to each other during the first few years that we knew each other. So initially we were friends, then we started dating, and immediately it was such an intense relationship. I don't know what happened from his side, but it was very intensely sexual between us. And I was also, being an Indian, I was also very strict about not wanting to have any kind of premarital sex before marriage. So those things played a lot of role in our relationship dynamics, and it led to a lot of toxicity within us, because his goals from the relationship were going in a different direction and my goals were going in a different direction. We both tried to come in the middle. We both even tried to have platonic friendship based relationships as well, because we were both living in US when this relationship started. We were both students in US doing some graduate studies, and we were both from India. And what happened was, in the initial years of graduate studies, this happens to many students when they are studying. They face a lot of loneliness. They don't get that many. They may have, for the first few years, they might have good friendships, but after a while, those friendships go their different paths, because everyone's like just seeking a financial life. Some people start dating each other or start getting married to each other. So people just get busy in their personal lives. So it is very difficult to have deep, meaningful friendships sometimes when you are a foreigner in a different country. So we wanted to be friends with each other when we knew that this relationship is not working in a way that we both will find satisfying. But we couldn't maintain the platonic friendship relationship because we had such intense attraction. So nonetheless, even though it was an intense relationship, even though it was a deep connection that I felt from my heart, and at that time I was very idealistic. So I was like, if we are in love, we need to stick it through. So these kind of relationship dynamic patterns, a twin flame, karmic and false twin relationships may present to people. So what happens with these karmic contracts and false twin contracts? Even soulmate relationships could probably do this. Because what are soulmates? Soulmates are people with whom we are traveling through life, and might have even traveled with them in our past lives. Soulmates are people who can become our spouses, can be our boyfriends, can be our best friends, can be even our parents or siblings or even our children. But basically soulmates are those people who have contracted with us in this lifetime to be in our lives for some amount of time. Now parents and siblings, they are usually the kind of soulmates who are with us in our life journey for decades of our life, whereas people who are our friends or co-workers or boyfriends or spouses, they may or may not be long term in our life. Some might be long term relationships, some might be short term. And the contract itself is in any of a karmic or soulmate or even false twin relationship, whatever relationship dynamics people go through, they may end up teaching each other some difficult soul lessons. And that's why people usually have a karmic relationship with someone else, either before they meet their twin flame, or they might be already in a karmic relationship, which could be their marriage, when they end up meeting their twin flame. So that's why there are some twin flame couples who might be married to different partners and might have been married for 1 year, 2 years, 10 years to different partners. But they might be each other's twin flame, and they are sometimes awakened to the fact that these two people are each other's twin flames, and sometimes it may take decades for people to awaken to this twin flame journey, to understand that they are twin flames. So even if you are not aware who is your twin flame, who is your karmic, who is your false twin, essentially if you are there in the twin flame journey, you will encounter these kinds of relationships in some form or the other. A karmic relationship even could be someone's ex-girlfriend. So you might be dating your twin flame, and it turns out that maybe they had an ex-girlfriend who was their karmic, who is not completely out of their life, because they have come in their life to teach them some lessons. Or it could be your ex-boyfriend who may not have been, you didn't realize whether they were your karmic or whatever, but while you are in your twin flame journey, they may also suddenly pop up in your lives to help you realize certain things about the twin flame journey, to help you realize whether you are what you need to wake up to, what is your soul purpose. So every relationship we encounter in our life is usually structured by the divine to help us in our own soul's growth. And when we are having some negative experiences with a lot of people, most of the time those negative experiences get termed as the karmic relationship. But why do we term negative toxic relationships as karmic? Is because sometimes people, when we are living a 3D life, we tend to describe relationships that are painful and toxic and difficult as our karma. Because what do people usually think karma is? People usually think karma is our past lives actions or current lives actions or choices that have led to something happening in our life. And most of the time there is a misconception. I also went through this misconception when we are in the initial healing stages of the journey, when we are in a little bit of a victimhood consciousness, when we are not able to understand and go beyond the 3D way of looking at things. At that time we consider karma as a negative thing. So we think like maybe in the past life I might have cheated on someone, that's why in this life my ex-boyfriend was cheating on me. Or someone might think my girlfriend, I might have met my girlfriend in my past life who might have been my wife, and in the past life maybe I was very abusive to her, that's why in this life she is verbally abusive to me. So maybe it's a verbal abuse, maybe it's a physical abuse, maybe it's neglect, maybe it's abandonment. These kind of situations crop up in karmic relationships which are toxic in nature sometimes. And it depends, the degree of toxicity of any karmic relationship will essentially depend on how we are in those relationships and how the other person is. How we are able to overcome it is also up to us, and how much the more we forgive these people who showed us some difficult painful lessons, the more we forgive ourselves for loving these people, the easier it is for us to slowly get out of the karmic relationship paradigms, and also slowly develop some self-worth. This is how my journey transpired. I also know a few females around me who have gone through such toxic karmic relationships where their spouses might have been abusive to them, either financially abusive or verbally abusive or physically abusive. Some have gone through extreme other cases like domestic violence. All these are all karmic patterns that are surfacing right now in this lifetime, for people to resolve those patterns, for people to learn something from those patterns, and for people to understand that this is not love. This is not, even if society tells you that if this is your spouse you have to stick with your spouse, or if this is your first love you have to be with this first love, or if this is the boyfriend with whom you slept and that's why you have to be with them for a long time. These are the belief systems and paradigms lot of men and women go through in life. Many religions also teach that once you're married, that is the only thing. You cannot, different religions have different teachings, so I won't go into that. But basically many humans have these belief systems and paradigms that have been set up by the society for a particular logical reason. And for most 3D relationships, if you are happy in your relationship, or even if you're not happy, if you are content and at peace within yourself with your relationship journey, then it is your journey and you should be happily married or happily dating or contently dating anyone. No one is questioning people who want to stay in such kind of relationship dynamics paradigm where some toxicities or some abuse are happening. Because even in normal relationships sometimes conflicts will arise, sometimes difference of opinions will arise, sometimes divergent life paths will come up. So that's a part of any relationship dynamics. But be it a karmic, soulmate, twin flame, whatever relationship you have with a significant other will have different set of challenges, because each person has a different set of relationship paradigm that they came on this earth's journey to understand and learn from. So every relationship will have its own set of challenges. But when the challenges are becoming unbearable, or if the challenges are triggering intense set of emotions like anger, hatred, toxicity, some kind of a behavioral pattern that is completely disrupting you, then those relationships should, ideally, a person should start reflecting, if the relationship is so painful, so toxic, whether they should stick around in such relationships, whether they should continue with such relationship dynamics, and how they should try to work through such toxic patterns, especially if there is abuse, assault, violence, those kind of things happening regularly in a relationship. It is time for a human being to pause and figure out their own self-worth in order to get out of such toxic relationships, which usually for a twin flame couple and even for anyone else can be their either false twin relationship or their karmic relationship, because there was a karmic contract with these people to help you awaken something within yourself. So if someone, there's always, even in the most negative challenging situation, there is always, after 5 years or 10 years of breakup, you may realize the silver lining. Sometimes you will realize the silver lining even after 1 year of breakup. So with me, when I was going through my false twin and karmic kind of relationship, I was feeling extremely uncomfortable with the sexual dynamics of our relationship. So immediately after breaking up, the first thing I felt, even though I was sad and really lonely and completely like crying all the time for many months, despite that, I had this inner knowing that this is not the right relationship. How much ever I feel deeply connected to this person, it wasn't the right relationship, because he was not respecting me. I was not able to be a nice, kind, calm version of myself. I wasn't able to be a better version of myself than what I would want to be in a relationship. So there were very much a lot of toxicities that were happening between us, which made me realize that both of us are going wrong in many ways. We didn't have the right communication language between each other, and that's why we were going through this false twin flame or karmic relationship. And I didn't see the silver lining in the first month I broke off. And there were many times I went back to him also. So there was a span of 3-4 years that I have dated him, in which I must have dated him for a month. Then we broke off for 5-6 months and again dating him for a month or two. So this kind of toxic pattern got set up only because we were both magnetized to each other. We were both vibrationally connected to each other. We were both lonely in our lives. We were both having a deep heartfelt connection towards each other. But even though we had a deep connection, magnetic connection, missing each other, all the normal things that a relationship will bring in a person's soul, despite all this, we were just not very functional with each other. And this is the dysfunction that people have to break. And for many years, I also, initially, I was reluctant to break off because he was my first boyfriend, and that's why I didn't feel like breaking it off. And I was very deeply connected to him. Even now, like after so many years, when I have met so many other people and interacted with so many other people, the powerful connection that I had felt with him is something vibrationally, I didn't feel that powerful, intense vibrational match with him about certain chakras. So our body, if people don't know, there are at least 7 basic chakras that to start with, though we have many other chakras. Chakras are also called meridians in other cultures, or it might also be related to our energy system is also called the Merkaba system. So different cultures call it by different names, but essentially our body is an energy system. So the 7 chakras we have, from root chakra to the crown chakra, all of these, if you are a twin flame and when you meet your twin flame, with your twin flame, all the 7 chakras will align. Whereas when you're not with your twin flame, sometimes certain chakras will align very well, which happened with this guy, that at least 3-4 chakras were aligning, and that's why we were able to continue for a while. But there were many chakras which didn't align, and because our other chakras were not aligning, we used to have this dysfunctional relationship. So this was my karmic relationship experience, and I have also seen many other women in my life around me who have had similar such toxic karmic relationships, and their degree of toxic patterns or karmic patterns have been different. Now, while I was trying to clarify about karma, actually speaking, every relationship which we encounter in our life can be actually described as a karmic relationship, because karma is not technically a negative term. Karma can be good karma also. So for example, we all know Jesus Christ and Buddha came and did a lot of good in their life when they were born on earth so many years back. Now, say Jesus Christ and Buddha's soul decide suddenly to come back again on earth and be born again, like this year or few years earlier they decided to be born on this earth. Now, these two souls had such good karma when they had left their earthly life centuries back. But because they had generated such good karma, every soul they would meet now in their new reincarnation might also be a karmic relationship, but they will likely be a good kind of karma relationship. That's why we sometimes meet people who seem to be extremely lucky. But why do they seem to be extremely lucky? Maybe they did so many good things in their previous life that in this life God has given them a kind of pass that you will reap the benefits of all the good deeds you did in your past life, and that's why in this life many things happen very luckily for you, or many things open up for you easily because you have the right kind of attitude. Because you will also see those people whom we deem to be lucky, they are very effortless in certain things that they do, and they are able to be effortless in certain things they do is because the soul has already gained certain mastery. Both Buddha attained enlightenment, and he doesn't have to be reborn on this earth. But I'm just giving a hypothetical example that Buddha can sometimes decide that because he has already mastered life on earth and understands enlightenment, he could come back again to teach many more souls now in this era who might need his help of his teaching again. So that's how basically karma works. So karma can also be good karma. So usually I have observed in my life that the soulmate kind of relationships can be considered like a good karma relationship. So I had one ex-boyfriend who was a soulmate relationship, and with him I had deep compatibility. We had great communication on many topics, like we used to love exploring different topics while we are conversing with each other. But our life together with each other was functional and compatible, but maybe like much more compatible than how I experienced with my false twin experience. But despite that, it was not the optimal level of compatibility that I would wish for in a relationship. And why was that? Again, in this one was also a kind of karmic relationship, but this one was more like a good karma type relationship. So I had most of the time, 70% of the time, we had a good dynamics between each other. But the times when our dynamics wasn't that great with each other is the time when the relationship just fell apart. It was not easy for either of us to communicate meaningfully to each other to build a good relationship for the present. And since we couldn't build a good relationship for the present, and because we couldn't understand each other at the deep soul level, it couldn't go into a deeper kind of a relationship. So these are the kind of relationships we will encounter with many people in our lives. Our parents also can be considered to be our soulmates. They may not understand us completely, but there would be like at least 50-60% of our personality might match with them. So they will understand us partly. Likewise, our siblings may not understand us completely, but there will be some aspects of our sibling relationship where our siblings might understand us somewhat to some degree, because of which they have chosen to be our siblings and parents. And our friends also could be our soulmates, with whom for years and decades we could have good great relationship bonds which lasts Sometimes some friendships last a lifetime, just like sibling relationships. Some friendships can last even a lifetime, only because those are those soulmates with whom we have decided before being born that we will help each other in our lives in whatever way we can, to help each other lead our lives the best way we can. So those are the kind of relationships where people have good compatible even marriages. Those are the soulmate kind of marriages or relationships. Now, despite having soulmate relationship, despite having quite a good connection with another soul, despite having great vibrational match with other soul, both these relationships were my karmic relationships. The false twin and soulmate both weren't my twin flame and relationship equivalent. And that's why, though there was a heart connection, though there was a somewhat a soul connection, though there was somewhat a life path connection with this soulmate, it didn't materialize further into a deeper relationship. Then after these two relationships, and while I also got married very briefly, that was almost a non-relationship. And how I realized that was a non-relationship was because the way the whole relationship transpired. It was very, very brief relationship, and in that I experienced something called as a catalyst relationship. And again, this is also a different kind of karmic relationship, and it was a catalyst relationship for me because that person, the kind of lifestyle they were leading, the kind of expectations they had from an Indian daughter-in-law and things like that were just not resonating for a person like me who had been living independently for like 12 years in US before I met this family. So after I got into this family, I realized that expectations from a daughter-in-law was something that people expect from a daughter-in-law might have expected from 50 years back or 100 years back. Even in my family, sometimes I do tend to see that my father's generation does think like that as well, very conservatively about how a daughter-in-law should be, or even how a daughter should be. But fortunately or unfortunately, while they have these conservative viewpoints on their daughter-in-laws and wives, because I had the luxury of living abroad for 13 years or 12 years, even though my family tries to impose those kind of Indian ways of very conservative living lifestyle on me, I usually am not able to go through that conservative lifestyle. And what do I mean by conservative? For me, the conservativeness comes in the lack of independence that most women face in India or in the Indian culture. And the lack of independence being like my ex-in-laws were very restrictive. Like we were living in California, they were living in California, I was living in Utah and finishing a MBA program. And while I am doing my studies and everything, I was occasionally like once a month going, once in 2-3 months going and visiting my husband for 2-3 days during the weekend. So now during these short visits only, they would curb my independence. They would try to not, if there was a cousin's birthday party or something, or if a cousin invited me for dinner, they were very restrictive about it. They needed permission. I needed permission from them to go to these events. And if they say no, then I cannot go. These kind of stupid, very stupid, dysfunctional policies were being followed by their family, which seemed like quite restrictive to me. And not just this, there were some other financial abuse kind of situations also happening, where because I was an educated woman, because I had lived independently for 12 years in US prior to meeting them, all these things didn't gel with me. And because I had had 2 previous relationships where I was never dependent on any of my boyfriends for any financial things. So because of these reasons as well, because I was always financially independent, I was always independent about what studies I would do or whatever work I would do. No one had, imposed those kind of restrictions in my life. And it seemed ridiculous for them to expect a career woman as a daughter-in-law and put these kind of restrictions on someone who's trying to pursue a career and a professional life. I used to work as a pharmacist before I met my husband, and because I was doing an MBA, I had stopped working as a pharmacist for a while. and there were other visa issues, and because of that I didn't work for as a pharmacist while I was married, and only briefly I was working as a pharmacist, and then most of the marriage time I didn't work. I was only studying at that time. So during this time I realized, like, while I was just studying, that I couldn't like fall back on, even this relationship seemed like more of a stress factor in my life than anything. And because I had already mastered being independent by myself, that's why it was easier for me to walk out of this relationship when I received a couple of threats from my in-laws and my husband about certain things, and they just decided to end the relationship, and I consented to it. And I think they had wanted to end the relationship as a threat, thinking that me being a girl would say no, how can it be, it's a new marriage, let's continue, things like that. But I'd already gone through something similar in my relationship with my false twin, where I had tried to work through things when things were not compatible, work through problems, try to figure out how we can, structure things such that it can become compatible between us. I'd given all that, effort, time, love, care, everything to the false twin, and I just knew, like, from the patterns I had experienced in the past, that there are just, by then I had developed this great instinct to know which relationship can work, which relationship can't work. Same thing, and the simultaneously, that whatever journey I was going through, I have experienced many other friendships, and many other people have seen their relationship dynamics. So by then, based on my just observational experience of many kinds of love relationships, I had figured out which relationship can work, which relationship just seems like a waste of time and energy. So eventually, because of this catalyst relationship, which lasted a very few months, when the ex-husband said he wants to end the marriage, I agreed to it. So all these things, they taught me different kinds of relationships. They taught me what love could be. Both my first boyfriend and the second boyfriend taught me what love could be. My ex-husband taught me what love is not completely, like almost like 90% of the interaction in that relationship was everything that love shouldn't be about. So based on all these experiences, and until I was in my mid-30s, that's when I had got married, I had always had this hope and dream that I should get married and I should have the normal lifestyle that every Indian woman has, and I wanted kids. All these were things that I'd always wished for. But because of all these experiences, I finally started even being happy for the fact that I don't have any kids, because I realized, like, if I did have any kids and if I didn't have a good compatible spouse with me, it would be very difficult for me to raise a kid on my own, because I didn't have good, deep, meaningful connections with my father and my brother. My mom had passed away in my early 20s. So, and even two of my grandmothers, one passed away before I turned 20, one passed away in my 20s. So basically, there were hardly any female relationships who could help me out in navigating a parenthood journey. And then on top of that, even though I wouldn't have had support from people who would help me navigate a parenthood journey, I also didn't have good deep connections in my life. So that was a very painful realization for me in my early to mid 30s. But it was a much needed realization, because when this marriage broke off, I realized that until and unless I have the right partner or spouse, I didn't wish to be a single parent. And even though I had also thought for many years, almost 15 plus years of my life, I had thought that I would love to adopt a kid, but somehow that is a thing I wasn't ready to do in my mid 30s. So but as I said, all these three different kinds of relationship dynamics and the difficult family dynamics, all of them just ended up making me feel very thankful for the fact that, I didn't have a kid, or I didn't have a marriage in my life, or even when I did get married, it didn't end up working out, because I realized that universe wanted my journey to be a little different from the journey of the norm that was around me. And only after I divorced, only after I let go of societal paradigms, only after I surrendered to my life path that was showing up for me, even though in my dreams, in my wishes for 20 years of my life, I didn't have that kind of a, I never imagined my life would go in that direction. Despite all these things, I finally just left it to God, and there were some family after my divorce who wanted to get me remarried. But I was like, no. After seeing these different kinds of relationships, I was very sure and confident that I would only get into a relationship if it was a deep, meaningful mind, body, heart, soul level connection. And if it wasn't a connection like that, I was ready to be unmarried for the rest of my life. I was ready to get married like if I reach my 50s or 60s. I really didn't care when that love would show up, because to me it was more important that I have a deep, meaningful relationship and connection with someone, and it was more important that that person also has some equal set of values and life path goals that I have, so that we can go and move in the right direction in life. And if those, because every time I went through a difficult relationship and challenging relationship phase, I kept learning more and more about what is the kind of love life that I would want with for myself. And if that love life doesn't exist, am I ready to be on my own? And I really became very thankful since my mid 30s, when people usually undergo divorce. It is a very difficult thing for women to undergo divorce, especially women in India and Indian culture. It's quite difficult because of social stigma and other financial burdens and other issues that people face in their lives. But because I had prepared, because the universe had prepared me for, I lived in US for 13 years. In those 13 years, the 1 year or so that I was married, I hardly felt like I was married. I had to still be independent only. So almost the 13 years of my life in US, I lived completely, entirely independently, both financially, emotionally, and every other way possible. So because I was independent in that way, I knew that it is easy for me to live life on my own, no matter where I am in this world. So after the but because this relationship was also a catalyst relationship, because this relationship of the marriage happened during the time when I was going through some professional dilemma as well, because my visa as a student had ended. I had already used up a 6-year work visa paradigm in US. So because of all those reasons, I decided, and the only ways I could have again stayed back in US was starting another degree program. But by then I had already gathered 3 master's degree. I had 1 partial doctoral degree that I couldn't finish because of visa challenges. All these things just made me decide that I really didn't wish to pursue all these legal hassles, legal problems, financial related lifestyle was great in US, but it didn't seem to matter to me at that point of life. So I decided that I'll just come back to India. And I also wanted to come back to India because I did know that once you leave this country and one's family, when you live outside, away from your family, you're not as connected to the family and all. So I wanted to rebuild some connections with my family, with my aunts and cousins and father and brother and all that. So all those reasons made me come back to India. And of course, after coming back to India, the next few years have been intense journey as well. That's because those were also part of the twin flame journey and the ascension process. But from my story, what I wanted you all to learn is that every twin flame will go through such kind of challenging life circumstances, challenging love related issues, some compatible issues, some might even experience very loving spousal relationships as well. And then those who have experienced like a good deep soulmate bond with their spouses, will have a different set of challenges, because if say there are two twin flames who are married to two different people and they are feeling this attraction and deeper soul connection with another human being, they have a different structured journey for themselves, and depending on that couple's journey, something will transpire between them. Whereas there could be other twin flames where one couple is married, the other person may not be married, they have a different thing. And there are the third kind of twin flames who are both probably single, and there are also the fourth kind of twin flames who might be married to each other but are not even realizing that they are twin flames. So every twin flame couple has a different kind of journey. And in the twin flame journey, though, only after I came back to India, and because I had closed doors to toxic relationship, karmic relationships, soulmate relationships that were satisfying but not completely soul fulfilling. So because of all these reasons, because I managed to close the doors to certain past relationships, and it was painful to close those doors, and it took me, even after coming back from US, it took me many years to completely close the door on many of these past relationships. But because I was closing those doors, because I was ending those soul contracts that we might have had even in past lifetime, because I was forgiving them, I was doing Ho'oponopono meditation and different other kinds of meditations and healing journey. As a result of that, as I was willing to close the doors to things that was not so serving my soul, that is when I got to know about my twin flame, because he is part of my soul purpose. And once I started knowing about my twin flame, then the door opened to all the information that is available about twin flame relationships, all the information that is available about what different kinds of twin flame relationships can be about. So for the last 4 years or so, I've been just kind of working on these kind of modules only, studying about twin flame relationships, trying to understand my own twin flame relationship, because though physically we are not present in each other's lives, spiritually we are present in each other's lives. And because we are spiritually present in each other's lives, some mystical things seem to be happening between us as we progress through the journey. And as I'm progressing through it, I'm also learning different abilities, as I'm doing energy healing, I'm learning different modules of living, which is kind of different from our 3D way of looking at life. And I hope that this was enlightening to all of you, and I hope that someday you all will try to understand your own twin flame journey and understand what twin flame journey can be about. Thank you.